We had a thriving 1.6 team. We had all the best players, all these teams that could be competitive with the Europeans.
Nate comes in, can Tripp finish it off? It's
Goal's gonna take it!
City is gonna win.
Goal is gonna win!
Most of our experienced teams, most of our experienced players all decided to just stop playing the game or quit. It was kind of starting from scratch all over again.
Live in the Dell Gaming Arena, it's Counter-Strike Source, our future Hall of Famers. It's the San Francisco Optics.
The beginning of CSGO in the Americas actually starts a little bit further back. It actually starts with the failed league and project of the CGS. We had a thriving 1.6 team. We had all the best players, all these teams that could be competitive with the Europeans. And when CGS came about, all of those teams made the switch to Source for this league, for this experiment.
Y'all ready for this?
Birmingham, are you ready?
Yeah.
San Francisco, are you ready? Ready, set, begin the match.
First round, here we go. Rattlesnake from the corner takes out War Machines. Paradox will sneak through there after taking.
And when it failed, there was no 1.6 scene left for these players and teams to go back to. Because most of our experienced players all decided to just stop playing the game or quit. And in that sense, it very much depleted the Americas region, especially North America, of all its players, and specifically the in-game leaders. We lost all of our experienced in-game leaders and tacticians and people who had known and learned how to play the game for a decade. So when the transition to CSGO finally happened, we had kind of like the leftovers. So we had, you know, a lot of our professional scene was filled with players who didn't become professional by earning it and by trial, who just kind of got moved up to fill the void. We had a very clear-cut number one and number two. You know, pug teams were formed out of guys like Hiko and Sean Gares and Dazed, who would later, you know, in some ways split up and form kind of the top three teams that we would have later on in CSGO. But early stages of the game was very much an identity crisis for players and teams in the Americas. No one kind of knew how to play the game. No one knew how to put a team together. It was just very, very confusing for teams on how to actually be competitive with the Europeans, especially because the Europeans just shot up away from us. So the Americans have always been chasing the Europeans in that sense. One of the biggest advantages that we have in the Americas region is the money. Just to be frank, is the availability of what you can do. Most of our teams don't have the high salaries that some of the European sides do and some of the organizations over there do. Haven't quite earned that, but the money goes very, very deep in the American scene, to the point where some semi-professional teams are even being salaried and paid. On top of that, the money as well is there for individual branding. You know, it's a very valuable market to sponsors, to people looking in from the outside. So if you have a good personal brand, if you are a streamer, you can be very, very successful in that sense. Some of the disadvantages that we have, the inexperience and the mindset. We don't have the experienced pedigree of some of the players over in Europe. You know, we didn't have the Get Rights and the Forests make the transition over. You know, the Freiburg exists from Source. We didn't have the Virtus Pros like Neo, one of the best players of all time. We didn't have Taz and Pasha, these guys who had so much experience competing at these high levels. We haven't seen a collection of 5 players come together and really operate as a single unit, as a team, the way that we've seen, you know, Astralis has kind of achieved that. You know, there's so many examples you can point to in the European scene. We don't have a single one yet in the North American region where you can say that. There's always some kind of issue with some personality or some individual player who doesn't seem to be putting all the work in, putting as much in as the others from the outside. The big obstacle there that we can't overcome at the moment is leadership. There's not a personality and there's not a force strong enough to do it, or if the players at this point have just been too experienced and too embedded in this kind of mindset that they can't change. It's one or the other, but until that obstacle is overcome, until someone breaks the mold in that sense, then the Americas region is always going to be one without a championship contender. The events in our region it's kind of fun. We either have like the very the very top, like these big, massive international stadium events where we usually get like maybe 2, maybe 3 teams involved in them, those don't give a lot of experience to the teams there. We don't really have a great circuit for tier 2 teams in North America. We don't have a great land circuit for those guys to go to tournaments and get experience. There's still a massive disparity between the top teams in NA and then the lower tier teams that compete. So you get the very, very big and you get the very, very small, but they all seem to have the same result in terms of inter-regional North American play. So the results, there's always, the North American region has always been defined by Cloud9, has been, the kind of top dog for some time now, for years, I think for about 2 years. And we've had brief spurts where CLG has been able to challenge that. We had a brief moment where Optic could challenge that. Liquid's always been there as a persistent challenger, but never able to actually overcome Cloud9 as the best team in the region. So Cloud9 is usually the team winning it, but the one thing we've seen very recently, in the past year, I guess it would be, more and more Brazilian teams winning. Immortals is beating Cloud9 very, very consistently. SK, obviously, within the region, when they came up from Brazil, is one of the best teams in the world. And they are the team that has come to North America and beaten everybody, and now they're competing with the Europeans. They're the only team that's been able to do it consistently. They came from Brazil, where there was no money, where there was no competition whatsoever. These guys moved across the world just to compete in the region that, despite what our players said, about not being enough competition, they came into the same region and they just kept improving and they never slowed down and they never stopped working hard. These guys are major winners now. If you want to point back to the one time North America had a super team of some sort, or the team that was supposed to be the best in the region, hands down, the team that was supposed to compete with the Europeans, it would have been Hiko joining the guys at iBuyPower when he left Cloud9. And due to the circumstances around their ban, we lost 4 of our top players. We lost 2 very experienced in-game leaders, and just 2 of the most individually gifted in AZK and in Swag. And there was nothing to fill that gap. That was just a void left, right? This was going to be the team that is the best. And SK came and filled that gap. When they improved, they've lifted everything, and they kind of are starting to show the other North American teams the dedication that it requires, the practice it requires, the kind of mindset you need to have in order to be successful. Without the Brazilian sides, all of them, I think this region is very, very devoid of any potential success. This fan base in North America, it's some of the best fans that we have out there. And I've said this for a number of years. This fan base is waiting for a team to get behind. This fan base, as soon as there is a North American team that can consistently challenge the Europeans, they are going to have such a massive fan base as we've never seen before in North America in this region.
I think it's just the underlying issue of Cloud9 seeming very uncomfortable on the CT side.
Yeah.
And they have to go for a play somewhere, right? Oh, look at this Skadoodle doing his best simple impression with the dropping kill and actually drops the smoke. Lures one out, he gets another. Now he's gonna get on the bomb. I think he's just gonna stick it. Henny, he's got a Glock.
He's got it.
And he can't fight it. The knife coming in and he's got it. Skadoodle is a hero.
Playstyle is very aggressive, very individual based. If you think Cloud9, Optic, what marks them? It's the aggressiveness. Stewie and automatic, Stewie going somewhere quick and getting map control. It's the vicious entries of guys like Tarek, of guys like Rush, and how aggressive they can be when they decide to finally go. If you think even to Liquid, one of the things that marked them for the longest time was how aggressive and how deadly Nitro and Elige were on an entry duo and how quickly they can take a bomb site. Everything is marked by aggression. That's the aspect that SK coming into this region is changing, because SK for a long time, they can do that kind of play style, but they have a structure to them. They have the ability to read the game and change their game plan and manipulate across the map and force rotations. And that's the side of the game that the North American teams must learn. And until that occurs, we don't have a lot of hope in the majors.